Welcome to the webinar to everybody who has joined so far. Thank you for joining. Throughout the webinar, please do tag us in your favorite design on Instagram stories and we will repost. You can tag us at Y4Nature and use the hashtag #Youth4Nature to tag us in your favorite designs and favorite artists and favorite activist pieces. We'll wait a couple more minutes to see who's joining. Thanks.
Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and I'm a member of Y4Nature and I'm very excited to be able to welcome you all here today. Thanks everybody for joining. I'm just going to go ahead and introduce myself and also the title of this webinar, but then I want the rest of the team to also be able to introduce themselves, and then also the speakers, if they can just pop in and say their name. So my name is Hannah, and I'm currently living in the US. And just really excited to be here. And here's the rest of my team. Oh, the name of the webinar is Activism Through Artwork. I'm very sorry. And we're here to talk about just how amazing of a tool art has been during this time.
Thank you, Hannah. My name is Emma, and I'm also based in the US, based in Boston. I use my pronouns she, her, hers.
I'm Sarah. I'm also in the US. I'm in Virginia, and I use she, her pronouns.
I'm Scout. I'm based in Rhinebeck, New York, and I use she, her pronouns as well.
And for our speakers.
Hello, my name is Emily. I'm based in the UK, and currently I am the Storytelling Director for Y4Nature. So it's nice to be here on this webinar and supporting Hannah, Scott, Sarah, and Emma on this work. I'm looking forward to it.
Hi, I'm Annabelle. I'm based in the US and I also use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm not sure if you included anything else in that introduction, but hi.
Hi, I'm Carmen. I use she, her pronouns as well, and I'm based in the US in Durham, North Carolina.
Hello, I'm Antea, and I also use she, her pronouns, and I'm currently based in Hong Kong.
I'm sorry. My name is Louis Val. I'm from Mauritania, currently quarantined in Tunisia. Thank you.
I think that's everyone. Emma, did you want to introduce our virtual speaker?
Yeah, so we also have a virtual speaker who's couldn't be joining us, but she sent over some responses. Her name is Jessica Thornton, and she runs Jessica Thornton Designs. She's based in Austin.
Perfect. And then Scout, if you could click to the next slide for me. So just to start off, we're going to do a little bit of an agenda. So I will start giving an introduction of our organization, Youth for Nature, and then I will pass it over to Emily, who can talk a little bit more about storytelling and activism, as well as our storytelling campaign. And then each of our featured speakers will have a little bit more time to give a more in-depth introduction and talk about their art. And then we're going to finish off with a panel discussion with all of the artists. All right, so starting off with Youth for Nature, our message is ensuring that political leaders don't forget young people, frontline and marginalized communities, and, well, nature, of course. And so our objective is to empower young people to lead on nature-based solutions for climate action through three main ways: storytelling, to elevate the voices of youth by providing a platform, to share their own stories and have them be heard instead of speaking over, and then have knowledge sharing, so mobilizing youth to advocate to political leaders, to deliver up to 30% of climate solutions needed by 2030 through nature-based solutions, and then through capacity building, which is to build the capacity of youth as stewards for a nature for climate movement. And then just to kind of give some context, this webinar is kind of an introduction and a lead up to the Nature for Life Hub, which is part of the UN Climate Week, which is happening next week, Thursday and Friday, so the 24th and the 25th, and then the following Monday and Tuesday, the 28th and the 29th. So if you enjoy this webinar, I'm gonna go ahead and post the link to that event in the chat, so you can click and see more details about that. But from here, I'm going to turn it over to Emily, who's a huge pillar in our storytelling campaign.
Hi, everyone. So yes, as introduced myself before, my name is Emily. As mentioned, I'm currently working as a storytelling director for Youth for Nature, which means I am in charge of trying to facilitate all of our storytelling work. As mentioned by Hannah, storytelling is one of our key pillars as an organization, which means it's an area we really work and focus on a lot. And since we launched an organization last year, one of the key things we did was develop and launch this storytelling campaign, particularly over the summer, through which we try to collect stories from young people all over the world, telling us a bit more about their relationship with the lands and the waters they live on, and also any projects or work they're doing on the ground in their communities. And that was quite successful. We received many stories from young people from many countries. You can also, if you go on our website, now you're seeing on your screen a screenshot of the story map, but if you go into our website, youth4nature.org/storytelling, you're able to go and see the story map, and you're able to go and find stories depending on the country you want to check for. And yeah, I encourage you to do so, particularly if you really want to know more about what young people are doing in their communities to help with the climate and the ecological crisis, but also what do young people think about these issues. And I think that's kind of what is core about our work on storytelling. We believe that it's really important to elevate the voices of youth, and storytelling enables us to give youth that voice. And the next step for us is trying to provide a platform for those voices to be heard. But I think that another important thing about the storytelling is how it can be really connected to making change, particularly the systemic type of change which we need to do with the climate and the ecological crisis. And at Y4Nature, particularly for the next year, one of our key important areas of work is going to be developing this storytelling work, particularly because we want to see young people's stories, to be able to access platforms, but also to be able to access tools, resources, in order to improve their stories and their work on the ground, and contribute to a hopeful narrative around climate change and ecological crisis. Because even though there are definitely many challenges and issues we are facing, there is hope and there are solutions, and many youth are leading in many of those. It's really important for us to showcase that. That's at the core of our storytelling work, and that's been quite important for us, and it's going to keep being important in the future. But now when it comes to storytelling and art, admittedly, even though when we open our calls for stories, we receive it more like photographs and videos and text, but not so much art-based stories. Even though we never said that we could not receive them, but we probably have to get better at trying to reach out to artists and making those links between art and storytelling, which I think that's going to be quite important when we relaunch the campaign soon. And it's also important, that's why we had also this webinar, because the thing about art is that particularly now that people are spending more time at home and social media, we're having access to all this information through Instagram, for example, through Twitter, through Facebook, and we're seeing the use of many graphics, for example, illustrations, in order to convey different political messages. Because right now, with COVID and many different social movements that have been going across the world, coupled with the ongoing climate crisis and ecological crisis, people sometimes they have been feeling more worried, anxious about the state of the world, the state of their countries, the state of their communities. And we have seen an increase of like people turning into like visual art, particularly in order to express their concerns, to spread solutions, to try to connect and to share information. And I think that that's why the whole concept of like artivism, activism and art is becoming very popular. And arts have the power to convey messages in ways which can be really captivating, but also like very emotionally captivating as well. So they have that emotional power, which is really important for us to work through as well. So obviously storytelling is a lot about sharing of the stories, but it's also a lot about sharing stories through other mediums, aside from like written formats or like verbal formats. And the other important thing about having the artivism is that it will allow us to be able to share even bigger stories, particularly considering better challenges when it comes to language, for example. So artivism helps to bridge those challenges and those gaps. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to developing and including more artivism in our campaign from now on. And I would encourage everyone to share ideas, to reach out, to see how we can do the work together. But also really excited to have this webinar and to hear more about all the amazing artwork we'll be showing and the amazing artists behind it. But yeah, that's a bit about us. I think now we can move into our speaker section.
Thank you, Emily. That was a really great introduction to Y4Nature's storytelling campaign. We are very excited to incorporate the artists in this webinar and beyond in the storytelling campaign. And now each of the speakers will get a chance to introduce themselves and their artwork.
Hi, everyone. I guess I should just talk a little bit. My name's Annabelle, and that's my stuff on the screen. I guess going off of what it says there on the screen, I'm about to turn 22, and I graduated from college like less than a year ago, and I studied environmental studies and political science. And I've always been really interested in both of those fields. And
my dailies are done. I can now rest.
Not sure if that was me. I don't think it was. But yeah, during the pandemic, I started, drawing more and getting in touch with my creative side. And I started posting that work to Instagram, which like gained a little bit of traction. I started like making friends on there and just like got inspired to keep doing that, which allowed me to connect with like a lot of other artists and environmentalists and people in both of those spaces, which led to me speaking here and working for intersectional environmentalists and contributing to a lot of really lovely causes that I wouldn't have gotten to be involved with in such a capacity had I not started doing digital art. And yeah, that's me. I'm from the United States, from New York.
Hey, New York, that's a cool place. Sorry.
So this is Jessica Thornton. She did not have the opportunity to be here, but still wanted to share some of her work. This is
Google or not?
Excuse me if you're not the presenter, if you could please mute yourself. Thank you. This is Jessica's first piece, Defend the Sacred, Protect the Refuge. Just to give a quick introduction on her, she is an artist and community organizer. She is currently living in Anchorage, Alaska. She was born in Finland and raised in the Netherlands, and actually lived in Scotland for 7 years, where she earned a master's in environment and development from the University of Edinburgh. She is an artist and a small business owner and currently works as an Arts in Action coordinator for the Native Movement, which is an Indigenous-led organization which provides support for grassroots-led projects that endeavor to ensure social justice, Indigenous peoples' rights, and the rights of Mother Earth. She is also a program coordinator for the Nature Conservancy, which is an organization dedicated to building food sovereignty and the repatriation of Indigenous lands through land trusts. And as you can see from her work, she works in various mediums, including screen print, letterpress, pen and ink, and digital art. She's inspired by Finnish heritage and culture, social and environmental justice movements, Arctic flora and fauna, and the unseen beautiful connections we have to our environment. She's really passionate about the role of art in building narrative strategies and social justice movements, and her art has directly supported communities and coalitions, including the United Tribes of Bristol Bay, as you can see, and Defend the Sacred, AK. I think there was one more image as well. Yes. So her Instagram handle is @JessicaThorntonDesigns, and her website is jessicathorntondesigns.com if you're interested in learning more and checking out her work.
Hi. So my name is Val. I'm 22 years old. I'm 22 years old. I'm from Mauritania, and I consider myself as a freelance documentary photographer and climate activist. So I have worked on my first project since 2015. It's called In the Light of Change. So In the Light of Change is a project that documents the impact of the climate change in Mauritania and some part of West Africa. And that project gives us a look about how the world will be with the impact of climate change based on the experience of people and cities in West Africa, and also based on the scientist research. And I'm an IT student. I'm a freshman. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am Antea, and I'm from Italy and Hong Kong. So I'm basically a poet and an artist, and I love to make art with mixed media installations, performances, and I love to incorporate a meditative and compassionate approach when it comes to art and artivism. And so this art piece, actually, I exhibited this in collaboration with a low-waste vegan restaurant at a music festival. And it was, to raise awareness for kids, especially regarding the issue of deforestation. And so this is a little story about basically these little goblins who live in the forest. It's quite fantastical, but it's mostly inspired by an ideal vision of the world where we all care for the forest, we all care for the environment, and every little action, you know, our days filled with every little action that can really help the environment, that, you know, we feel some sort of affection and love for the earth. And so, yeah, I made this little comic, and, you know, I hope to not just inspire inspiration and imagination, but also genuine sense of care for the earth. Yeah, and so this is my art, and I love to tackle different issues, especially regarding the earth, because I believe that the earth is a bigger body of ours. We're not just this body, but we are responsible for a bigger body. And so if we can take care of ourselves, we should be taking care of our bigger body. Yeah. Thank you, Marina.
Hi, I'm Carmen, and I'm 17. I recently graduated from high school, and I'm on a gap year right now. And I'm based in the U.S. in Durham, North Carolina. But I have been like doing art for like a good amount of time, but it wasn't necessarily my main focus up until like more recently. I would definitely say that I was in the mix with like advocacy work, specifically related to climate justice and social justice issues in general, and like in the art space, but separately, for a good amount of time. And then it was only more recently when I like I'm still participating in this, but I was in a residency with Our Climate Voices, another like sort of youth-focused storytelling climate organization. And so I'm sort of in this like phase right now where I'm exploring how those worlds intersect, and how you can use art as a form of activism and to process the complicated emotions behind like the climate crisis. And yeah, excited to be here today.
Thank you so much to all of our speakers. It looks like we're having a bit of technical difficulties right now, but we can still move right into our panel discussion. So thank you so much for those introductions. It was really inspiring to see all of your artwork. I think the first question that we wanted to ask everybody, and a couple of you touched upon it, is how long have you considered yourself an artist? And if you consider yourself an activist, how long have you considered yourself an activist? And I think I'll ask Annabelle to speak first if you're comfortable with that.
Of course. How long have I considered myself an artist and an activist? Well, I guess I haven't been like a formal artist for all too long. Like I mentioned in my introduction, I started like seriously working on, you know, digital art and like practicing and trying to find a voice and a style in like April of this year during quarantine. I've always like been a creative person and like doing, you know, art and creative things like in my free time, but I never like saw it as part of who I am, or, you know, really committed to focusing on it or getting better at it. It was just kind of like a nice little side hobby. But, you know, with all the time, like I graduated in December from university, and then I was just gonna hang out in my college town with my friends for, you know, December to May. And obviously that didn't go as planned. But I had a lot of time on my hands, like a lot of other people did, and I just dove right into it. And then like are in the activism or the activist title, but I'm definitely like, you know, very passionate about the environment and have been for the past like 3 or 4 years.
I think there's a lot more questions that jump into my head with that, but I would definitely love to hear anybody else's answers if they want to answer this question. I'll go ahead and read it again. How long have you considered yourself an artist and an activist, or an activist? Any of our speakers?
I think I can answer that. All right. So I think I start to consider myself as an artist since when I was like 6 years old, when my brother bought me a camera at that time. But I think in another way, I start to consider myself as an activist since the ocean water flooded the house where I was born in Mauritanian capital Nouakchott. So since that time, I start to ask my father why we are leaving the house and something like that. And then he told me it's related to climate change and something like that. And since that time, I start to learn about climate change and something like that until I start my own project about climate change based on my personal story. So I think on that time, I have 11 years old or something like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. I'm so sorry that that happened in your home or within your community.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for sharing your work. It's so impactful and powerful. Yeah. I definitely recommend everybody going to check out the website of his work. Very moving. Carmen, could I be able to pick on you to answer this question?
Of course. I have always been like really interested in the arts. I started more as like a dancer and definitely was very into ballet for a while. More because of the artistry of it than like the technical aspect. It was just sort of like gave me a different kind of joy, I guess. And then more recently, I have been spending a little bit more time on like visual arts rather than just movement, which has also been fun. But I would say I've considered myself an artist for like as soon as I could just like put lines on paper, basically, because I always just really enjoyed it. And then an activist, like, I don't know, I almost feel scared to use that title, like similar to what Annabelle said, but for a while, like up until my junior year of high school, I knew about what was going on. Like I would read all of this frightening information, but I sort of felt like frozen where I was, like all of this stuff coming at me, but not necessarily knowing how to deal with any of it. But then I don't know, I sort of just had this point where I got tired of not like being able to actively do something. So I started organizing like at my school, getting people just, worked up about it, and getting a bunch of people out to like local strikes that were going on and stuff. And like then I sort of plugged in with Sunrise Movement, and some like other local places that are just for like my area. And so probably I'd say for like 2 years, because like the past 2 years have kind of been more, my major focus kind of shifted to that. So
Yeah.
I'll say that.
Yeah, I think it's really, from what you and Annabelle have shared about the activism piece, it's seeming to me like it's definitely like a conscious movement in that direction. It isn't something that just happens, and it is difficult to like label within that, but yeah, I don't know. Thank you so much for your guys' answer. I really appreciate it. Emma, you want to be able to move to the next question?
Sorry, my our next question is, what is your vision of an ideal world, and how do you bring that forth in your artwork? I wonder if Al, you want to take this one to start with?
Yeah. I think it is not It's not like a vision, it's like a hope. And this hope is like for an ideal world is to see a planet with all the elements of sustainability and humanity. And those become above any political or race or ethnicity consideration. So this is my hope or vision. You can call vision or hope. I call hope.
Yeah, Val, I completely agree with you. And I think it's also a hope. It's being able to see that sustainability and also coming together as a movement to, bring forth shared values. And I think to do that, we must all be very vulnerable. We must be open to each other, to listen and to collaborate. So for me, that's also a big part of, the hope, to be able to almost view ourselves as like a single-celled organism in the body of humanity. And so we have to be the change that we want to make and see in the system. And to do that, it's people that love to do art and love to do activism and that organize webinars like this. We're basically kind of creating these waves of movement by being and embodying that change. So I kind of see it as we bring the future into the present and to really almost act like it's here. And if we want to bring it into the present, we have to act like we really are following the vision. So yeah, that's how I see it. I see it as a hope of reciprocity, also being able to pay back to the people that are our roots, our ancestors as well, to see where we come from and to care for each other. I think a big part of it is healing others and healing ourselves, so that we can be open to listen to other people's ideas, to communicate effectively, to build bridges. Yeah, so a lot of it, I think, is just building important relationships with people and being vulnerable. Yeah.
That's such a beautiful way of putting it. I can see like the poetry coming. I love it.
Can't help it.
Everything you said was quotable. Anybody else on your vision for an ideal world and how that comes across in your work?
I don't know, like, if my work necessarily reflects this vision. A lot of the times, a lot of times, like, I found that my work is more like reflective of the current state. But I would just say, in an ideal world, like, everyone would have the luxury of doing what they love and spending time with people they love. And like, to get there, like, that means everyone needs a space, and we have to make that space. Like, it's hard to like what Antea was saying about the reciprocity, but that's what I imagine, at least.
That's completely beautiful. And I love when that all of your answers just totally blew me away from the things that I think about. So it's, yeah, incredibly humbling and great. Thank you so much for sharing your answers. We'll move to our next question. Have you seen your art make an impact?
I could say something about that if no one has anything off of the top of their head. But at least for me, with a lot of the stuff that I do, since it's primarily like digital and, my main channel of like communicating with people is through Instagram, it's like really powerful to see how many like people, resonate with a message, like especially with something that I'll design for intersectional environmentalists, like, we'll like create a graphic or a design that's about, social justice issue, or like that has, a phrase or a message on it that like we feel or want people to resonate with, and then seeing how like widely those things can get shared. Like I'll be on like my not art account just like scrolling through, and I'll see like a friend that I haven't spoken to in a while that like shared it because they follow the page, and it's just like amazing how like connected people can be without even realizing it. So I've just definitely like taken that to heart with like, yeah, just seeing people like, and not just my work, but like seeing people reshare other people's work that like they might not even know who the artist is that they're resharing, but it's like they still connect with it and resonate with it. It's just like everyone has, you know, a little like art gallery in their phone, and it's very special, I think. Yeah.
That's awesome. I think it's always just amazing to me. A lot of what you're saying, like, I wrote this down, it's an important quote. It's powerful to see how many people resonate with the message, just because we're all so individual and different, but we can all come together in a collective thought and rally around a specific cause or a specific hope. And sometimes the more specific we can get within those things, the more people can relate. And it's really crazy because it shouldn't work that way, but it does. So, and I love the point of having like a mini art gallery in our pockets. And Thea, I'd love to hear about your points on this, as you have worked with making art for children. You shared about that. I would just love to hear.
Yeah, I feel like for me, my art really, I feel like it sparks kind of conversation, and this is art for everybody. It really kind of brings like a shock element, because art comes from like a vulnerable place. And I believe that when people kind of see something coming from a vulnerable place, people open up, and it sparks conversation, it sparks new ideas, and it's not anymore about the artist or the art, it's about whatever's happening around the art. And the new ideas that kids, also especially kids, come up with. I feel like kids have this hidden wisdom and knowledge, that this way of seeing the world that is so beautiful, and it's so hopeful, and it really has taught me so much. And you know, they're basically the future generation. They're the ones that are going to be inheriting this world. And so, you know, we should be keeping them included, especially with art and their art. So I think for me, when I worked with kids, it's mostly kind of encouraging them to make art, to create like this space where it's not me showing an art, it might be me sparking, you know, this little fire, and then they create together, and then they can see, oh, how can we, you know, together create ideas, how can we, you know, share our hopes with the world. And that's a really beautiful thing to see, just kind of strength in numbers. I see it kind of like as an emergent property that comes out of people coming together. And I think that's a very big function of art. Yeah.
I feel like the way that we're speaking so highly about children is the way that like Youth for Nature like wants like adults and politicians to talk like to include youth, like that, to be that rallying force. That's why intergenerational approaches are so significant and important, because everybody has something to contribute. We can't even doubt it, that children just have something about them that is just like a new lens. And it's like for us as well, even though some of us are in our 20s, we're young people, even though we like to joke. But yeah.
I agree so much.
That's what I was connecting with. But yeah, thanks so much, Anthea.
And the next question we have is if everybody could just go around and explain your style of art, like your medium, what you like to use to create art, and how you came to it.
I'll go first again. I mainly use my iPad. I'm like not the most traditional of artists. I sketch a lot like on paper, but when I want to turn something into like a fully done piece, I use, you know, digital programs on my iPad. That's like basically my entire workflow, which is really nice. I like to travel a lot, and like I'm usually, you know, pretty lightweight, like living out of a backpack, things like that. And so just having one tool is very, very helpful for me. And then I like, you know, I dabble with some like other things here and there, but all of my like art for the purposes of like environmentalism and sharing on Instagram is pretty much done digitally.
And how do you think that impacts like your social media presence? Like, do you think that if you still wanted to have a social media presence and work with organizations like Intersectional Environmentalist, is it like, are you doing stuff through your iPad in order to post on social media, or is it like
I mean, it's definitely not necessary, but for the purpose of like my personal art, like I could be doing, you know, I could be doing traditional stuff. I see a lot of like, there'll be an artist that I follow that I like am inspired by, and I'll like realize after months of following them, and I thought they were a traditional artist, that like they're doing everything on the iPad, or vice versa. Like I'll think that they're working with like an iPad, and then it turns out that they're like just a traditional watercolor artist, which is like fascinating. But for the purposes of like working with an organization or like a company and like creating posts and like social or like graphic content for them, I think it's like very important to be using either like some sort of digital medium, because it's just, you know, with like the amount of content you need to produce, and with like, I mean, that's such a digital platform. Like I don't know if that'd be really cool, but I don't know if I've ever seen like an Instagram that like, you know, has that much new content that's like all of their posts are made in a traditional format. So it's definitely like very necessary for like most of my like freelance projects or for working for intersectional environmentalism or environmentalist. But yeah, I mean, they say like one of the most important things for like building an online presence is like being consistent and posting a lot and like interacting with people. And so I definitely like feel for the people who, you know, if you're an acrylic painter and you spend like a month on every piece, that's amazing. And I'm sure your work is so special and beautiful, but you're gonna have to like come up with alternative things to post if you want to like be consistent as consistent as posting like a new project every day, which like a lot of the digital art people that I follow are doing, which is also impressive. Like I can't even do that. So I don't know, I think it's definitely helpful, but not necessary. That's a long answer, sorry.
No, that's great. Oh, are you going to say something?
Yeah, I think what Anna said was really amazing. But I think, well, everyone has his own tool to do his magic. And that's for me, I see photography as my most suitable tool for expressing my ideas. And from a broader scape, a picture is, I think, is always perceived as more expressive, whether is it for like climate change issue or any other. So my choice for photography, I think, as a method for activism, find its justification from both a personal perspective and as a mass one. Yeah. Very bad, right?
Thank you for sharing. Carmen or Anthea, do you have anything to add about your different styles? I know I really like that everybody on this webinar has a very different style and different way of creating art. Photography, digital art, painting, poetry. I think it's fascinating that everybody has a different way of expressing themselves.
I can jump in really fast. I would definitely say I'm in a point with my art that like, I don't know, some of you guys have probably experienced this too with other art people, but for a while, I would just really stick to realism, and I would jump around between lots of different mediums, like just trying out like different ways of like reproducing things. And so recently I've sort of been in that weird phase of trying to figure out like my creative voice and like what works for me and like what I want it to look like versus like what, I don't know, like it's just in a little bit of a in the middle place right now, if that makes sense. But I definitely would say that I do really like to paint with acrylics. And I think my portfolio would reflect that. So I do like come back to that as like my home base, but my style definitely is still evolving. I find myself like leaning on lots of like bold colors, and I'm much more of like an organic shape kind of gal rather than like line work, you know. But yeah.
Carmen, I think your evolution is amazing. I think it's so cool to always keep exploring. Like I'm definitely still exploring, and I also love to do like really bright colors and more organic shapes. I feel like it's just more natural and free flow. And I love to be kind of spontaneous with my art. I also I feel like I go through phases with my art mediums. So I started with a lot of like drawing, and then kind of like Photoshop. And then I started to do like installations because I was like, you know what, I want to work with like big stuff and handle big things in space. And it felt like, you know, you can kind of like dance in the space that you're making the art. So it was kind of a process. And then now I think I'm getting into kind of performance art, just because it's out of my comfort zone. And I thought, you know, why not like try something that would make me kind of uncomfortable but excited at the same time. So yeah, I'm trying that out right now. And also, yeah, just kind of including more people. So doing like interactive pieces. I think it's a bit hard to find maybe opportunities to do that. You definitely have to like send grants and project ideas, because it's a bigger scale. But it's been fun so far. I feel like I'm learning in every step. So yeah, exploration is fun.
These are awesome answers. I feel like I'm totally in the mind of like artists right now and the things that you guys think about. So thank you so much. All right, I think this is definitely the most important question, and we included them in the slides for sure, but if there's anything we've missed, we can go ahead and for sure add them like on our own socials. And just for everybody in the audience right now, where can people find your art? And do you do sales commissions? Do you have a website? As people are loving your art more and more.
I'll go first again. I'm obviously on Instagram. Like that's what I was talking about a lot earlier, and that's how Hannah found me, or whoever found me from Y4N Nature. I think it was you, Hannah. And that's where I share most of my work. And then I have a website that goes by the same name as my Instagram handle, and I haven't updated that in a while, which I should. And then I sell like prints and some other products on Etsy right now. So those are like my three main channels. And yeah, I just am pretty active on there.
I was noticing that later on that your Etsy and how you make pins and you do ink prints. Look really awesome.
I have a few different things on there. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. We want to highlight that. Thanks so much, Hannibal. Carmen and Thea. I believe that we've highlighted Val's website with his work. But Carmen and Thea, do you guys have places we can find you?
I like more recently compiled my stuff into a website portfolio type situation on carmen-allison.weebly.com. I haven't like paid for the actual domain, but that's okay. But I was using it more for like college applications and stuff, but recently I've started like adding more to it and, you know, organizing and making it, you know, just cleaner, I guess. And I have been like started doing commissions. So I've done a few of those. So, you know, always a thing that is happening. I also just like like working with other artists. I've done this more with like dancers in the past because I'm trying to get into more choreography work, but like I think it would also be cool to collaborate with other artists. I don't really know on what, like I'd obviously have to think a little bit more about it, but always open to collaborations as well. Got some time on my hands. I like, for the most part, I have little windows. And yeah, that would be cool as well.
Yeah, for me, yeah, you can find my website. I think I put it like on my slide, but maybe I'll put it in the chat. And I made it around 2 years ago, and I kind of put all my art, my illustrations. I really enjoyed to do commissions, especially illustration commissions or paintings. But yeah, or else I kind of like to do bigger projects, which would take more time and more collaboration. You can also find my Instagram, which is just my name, Antea _JPEG, which is JPG. I'll also put that in the chat in case anyone's interested. I'm also kind of getting into this whole Instagram art thing. I'm not really sure how to do it. I just kind of post my art, put some hashtags. But yeah, it's a process I'm learning. But yeah, mostly I enjoy to do commissions. So if anyone's interested also just in collaborating, I love your idea, Carmen. I think we can do great things together. So yeah.
So wholesome. Oh my goodness. I also just wanted to quickly say that Annabelle had to leave, and she wanted to say thank you and goodbye to all her fellow speakers and then the audience. Thank you so much for posting that, Anthea.
Our next question is, well, I kind of want to combine two questions. Why do you create art? And have you, if you're focusing on art and activism, have you always focused on activism? Do you think about art as a tool for activism? If you don't, is that something that you consider in the future? So the main question, why do you create art?
I can start if that's okay. I would say like the reasoning has always been sort of the same. It's just like been a personal like interest of mine. Like I feel like there's no way to like there's no replacement for it. Like there's only that one way to express. I don't know. It's always, like I couldn't really channel certain things or express what I want to express without using art. So like that's like at the root of it. In terms of activism, I think I touched on this a little bit earlier. It's only been more recently that I've like started like thinking of art as a tool for that. Right when COVID happened, it was like I was in the process of just, like planning a climate strike for our school. It was like going to be the big one in April, I don't know, on Earth Day. So that was like, that's what originally got me thinking like, I know Extinction Rebellion was doing some big art campaign back then. And I was like, oh, like, that's kind of a good idea since we're now like have these different circumstances. But yeah, it hasn't always been like that though. I've usually like, they've been separate spheres that are just coming together, but I think it could be really powerful because like we said, like it's a very vulnerable way of form of expression that speaks to a lot of people, and that's what we want in activism, is to like reach more people. So and if it speaks to them, then great. You know. But that's all.
Oh, do you have something to add?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think art and creativity are capability within a human nature to express a certain idea or to capture a part of history. So personally, I had a huge admiration for art and humanities since my childhood, and a great hatred for political power, forcement, and cruelty. And also, I can say that art is a good part of a human psychological manifestation. So, however, I personally I create art merely as an obligation toward society, so I can keep myself tied to the values in which I have always believed in. So I think that why I'm creating art.
I love that. And I think art is really amazing for connecting with other people and, you know, making connections even with people that you don't know, because it's so emotional and, partially like Carmen was saying, so personal. You really put a lot of yourself into it.
Yeah, I really agree with you, Emma. I feel like it's such an emotional and vulnerable journey. Like for me personally, I think I started to make art for myself mostly just because I felt such a relief when I was making art. It was just so, it allowed me to get in touch with my thoughts, with my body, with what was going on. And it allowed me to explore myself. Like, what do I care about? You know, what am I painting about? And so that was a whole kind of process of self-exploration. And then I realized art is also kind of a process of exploration of the world, because inevitably, you know, we are kind of products of our environment and the world. So I realized whatever I'm finding within me is a reflection of what's going on the outside as well. So I feel like for me, art is not just discovering myself, but discovering the world. And to be able to share that, as you said, the power of sharing art, and to be able to, you know, kind of share ideas and to inspire each other is amazing. The way that I feel like I'm inspired by art, I cannot even explain it in words. Sometimes I see an artist's art piece and I feel such a spark in my heart, and I start to really get inspired by their message, and it can really you know, bring me to change certain aspects of my life or how I perceive things. So I really believe that art is such a powerful tool for transformation, collectively. Yeah.
Wow. Just wow. Thank you so much. Would you guys be able to share some of your favorite artists or some of your inspirations? I'm just really intrigued, especially from Antea's answer. You can drop them in the chat, or you can talk about them for a little bit.
I can just jump in really fast. I think that in terms of like visual artists, I know that when I look at some of my work, I can like tell I'm like, oh, you can tell that I like Dali, like Salvador Dali. Like I don't know, he always has those like crazy like bright colors, kind of chaotic, like jarring stuff, and his work is like really amazing to me. And I went to one of the museums, his museums in Florida a long time ago, and I just remember just being like totally like awestruck, you know. Other than that, Basquiat, I went to an exhibit when I was in New York, and that was wild. He has some crazy stuff too. And before I go on another tangent, I'm just gonna one more. But there's this lady named Tyler Ray, and she works like she does some research, but she like works with movement more. And her work is fascinating because it takes movement and uses it as a way to like express grief and like loss and a lot of different just like complicated emotions regarding the changing environment. Specifically, I think her work right now focuses specifically on like glaciers and melting, but Tyler Ray is definitely someone worth looking up because her work is very inspiring and worthwhile. And I'll end there, even though I could probably go on for a really long time.
Carmen, I love Basquiat a lot as well. I got really excited when you said that. He was honestly the artist that inspired me to, start to love art. I feel like watching his documentary like has taught me so much about art, like the way that he creates without boundaries, and how fearless he has been and courageous. I honestly love everything about him. So yeah, that's it for me. He's great. You guys should check out his story, his documentary, and the work that he has done. He's such a great person. Yeah.
Another question that we had came in from one of the participants, and I think it's a really interesting question. Does art help you manage feelings of eco-anxiety when you're dealing with environmental issues? And if so, how?
I mean, I would say definitely yes for me. My sort of dive into artivism originally was like with Our Climate Voices, and the residency is specifically about like eco-anxiety and climate grief, so like that's like our prompt when making it, and it really like helps me reflect on what that means to me, and like get it, I don't know, it's sort of like it just helps you get in touch with like some really complicated and intense emotions, because I think a lot of us in the art environmental activism sphere, both separately, like are like, and youth in general, have like this underlying stress like about the climate crisis, and taking art like something so meditative, and I mean it can be frustrating obviously, but like in general it is like a good like practice. Like it helps you step back and like understand those feelings more, and I think that's valuable. So.
Anyone to go? For me, I think the answer is not, because based on my work, I do a lot of trip inside the local community who are affected by climate change. So when I start this trip and try to document those people who are really suffering from the impact of climate change, I think it's making me very disappointed or depressed to see those people who are really suffering because of the impact of climate change, while they are not participating in any emission of the carbon. So I think doing my work as a freelance documentary photographer, it's making me feel very disappointed to see those people suffering from the impact of climate change.
Yeah, it's got to be very hard to see it firsthand and to really capture that sort of emotion. Yeah, I can't even imagine. But I think it's super important, the work that you do for everybody else in the world who is sheltered or privileged and doesn't see the effects of climate change firsthand, or if they do, it doesn't impact them that much. I think it's so important to see that there are people and plants and animals out there that are really, truly impacted. So thank you, even though it's hard. Thank you so much for the work that you do. Ante, I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to say about it. Otherwise.
Yeah, for me, I feel like it's definitely helped with feelings of eco-anxiety, art, um, especially because I feel like we make art not just to kind of show what's happening in the present, but also out of a sense of hope to change. And so for me to spend time making art, and I'm focusing on that, on this, let's say this vision of how we hope the future to be, it brings a lot of joy in me, for sure. I think I'm just really hopeful about this generation, and I think that it's great to focus and know what's going on, but it's also great to focus on what we want to bring into fruition. And so for me, that's art is almost like a meditative practice of focusing on what we want to create together. And that makes me quite excited. And usually it helps with those feelings of ego anxiety, because I almost see it as, okay, maybe I'm feeling this anxiety, but I can transform that feeling of anxiety in my body into excitement for what we can do. And it's, you know, kind of dropping into my body, which is what art helps me do. Kind of half meditation, half art, but it helps me that way. So I can try to label anxiety into excitement, and it definitely brings more stillness and joy into my life. So yeah, and also seeing people's art based on climate change, and I'm just like, wow, it's amazing. This person has been motivated to create art for the planet and for the earth. And I'm so happy about that. I rejoice in that, that we're all doing this together. So yeah, I think that's how I feel like art helps me with ego anxiety.
Thank you for sharing.
For any of the speakers, do you have any lingering thoughts or anything you would want to share? We're at the end of our questions now. We definitely, after, I want to open the floor up for anybody watching to be able to ask questions as well. So, speakers first, do you guys have anything you'd want to say?
I just wanted to say thank you for all sharing your artwork with us. Like you were saying, that like it's so inspiring to see the work that people are already doing, and it really also helps with like my own ego anxiety for one. So thank you for sharing, and thank you for being this panel.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys for like putting this together and hosting.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much for organizing this beautiful coming together.
It was great to have you all in one space, and I'm really looking forward to us collaborating in the future and incorporating your artwork potentially in our story map and other campaigns in the future. We are so excited to be partnering with you already, so thank you so much.
And I want to say before we finish, I hope you can hear me. I have my earphones. Okay, that's good. It was really nice to hear everyone, to hear all your different stories and all your views on art, on activism. It really brought me back to why actually I became more involved in climate work. And it's because I was abroad and I was doing an art residency in Senegal, actually. And as part of the residency, we did some tours and we were going through some environmental issues, particularly like coastal degradation and flooding, which is happens a lot in Senegal because it's just a very coastal country. And I had so many pictures which are in my blog, and I use it to make many blog posts and to reflect. And like those experiences, which sometimes I go back to, and those pictures, they really help me to motivate me. You know, we have all these problems going on. I realize there are things that are worth fighting for, like the places I was in Senegal, they really keep motivating me. So I think that from art, it can be really helpful, even if it depicts something that can be a negative situation, you can get hope from it to be like, you know, there's something I have to change, and you remember and you have it present. So in that way, having those pictures and that experience doing artistic residence in Senegal, it still comes back to my work now in storytelling and like climate justice. So it was really nice to hear everyone's experience as well. And I felt like it was a really nice chat to get everyone. And I hope we can still be involved in some way, engaged in some way, and particularly also with our storytelling work. I would love to have some of your stories on our website, for example, on a story map. But yeah, let's keep connected. And thank you so much for being here on the webinar. And well done also, Hannah, Sarah, Scott, and Em for organizing this webinar. It was really lovely.